Hi, and welcome to the Leader's Edge, our weekly live interview show where Georgia Donaldson and I, Emily Chiwa, we feature successful CEOs and professionals who are so kind to share their stories with us. We want to bring awareness, inspiration, and leadership tips for you to action to help you sharpen your competitive advantage and make a positive impact in your organization and community. Remember, if you are watching us live, you can comment on LinkedIn if you want to ask a question for us to address on the show. So today we are speaking on the topic, we are sharing with you the topic, are you on the menu? So there's a saying that goes, if you're not at the table, you're probably on the menu. And this episode is going to help you determine if you are really at the table or simply on the menu. And not only that, if you can also, it can also help you decide where you'd rather be and what you can do to shift from one to the other. So, as usual, before we bring on our wonderful guest Lara, who Georgia will introduce properly in a second, I just want to invite you all to bring to your awareness in your own situation. What when decisions are being made about you or that concerns you, in whatever context, are you at the table? And if you're not at the table and you're not happy with the current situation, are you willing to consider ways to change that? If you're in the latter group, stick around because you are in for a treat. Georgia?
Yes, yes. Guess who's coming to dinner? It's
Or
Lara.
breakfast.
It's breakfast. Well, I have a teenage son. Well, he's not teenage, he's a little older now, and he has breakfast at 3 in the afternoon. So
Oh, there you
there you go. Any meal, anytime. Now, folks, when we hear the name Lara Quentrell Thomas, for those of you who know her, there's hardly an introduction that's necessary. But for those who have not had the pleasure of meeting Lara, let me tell you some of the things that come to mind when I hear her name or I see her. When I see Lara, there's business networking. Lara knows how to work that room. I also think of philanthropy when I think of Lara. And guess what? Recruitment expert. From beginning to end, that's Lara. She's a recruitment expert. And there's one other word that comes to mind, founder. So who's Lara Quentrell Thomas? She's the founder and chairman of Regency Recruitment and Resource Limited. And she's the founding president of the TT Organization of Recruitment Service Providers and founder again of AFET, the Association of Female Executives of Trinidad and Tobago. And there is so much more to Lara. And I'm sure she'll share a little bit with you. But Lara, you are always talking about being at the table. I guess you have been at many tables. Tell us about how you got to some of these tables and what you've done while you've been there.
Well, thank you and good morning, Emily and Georgia. Thank you so much for this lovely invitation. Even though it's at the crack of dawn, I am delighted to be here with you both. So I think when I started my business nearly 30 years ago now, 1996, this was a time before social media, before cell phones. I'm sure many of our viewers are looking on with horror to think that there was even such a time. And it was made very clear to me early on, opening my business here in Trinidad and Tobago, that it was really, in order to be successful, it was really very much about who you knew and, more importantly, who knew you.
Yes.
And so very early on in my career, building the business on a very small budget, not being able to afford television ads, newspaper ads, billboards, I really recognized that in a country the size of Trinidad, I think perhaps most communities, you really had to get out and about. You really had to let people know who you were, what you were selling, what you were offering, why you were better than the competition. And of course, Trinidad is a place I think that offers so many wonderful opportunities to do just that.
Right.
But if the opportunity doesn't exist, then you create the opportunity, which is exactly what we did with AFET and with TORS. But one of my earliest invitations, if you like, to be part of a network, and as you mentioned, I'm very dedicated networker, certainly in the early stages of my business, was in 1999. I was invited by one of my clients to join Rotary. Rotary is the world's largest service organization. There are clubs all across the world of professionals who get together to do community service projects, We're very focused on peace building, supporting youth empowerment. So it really spoke to me on many levels. And in fact, my father had been a Rotarian, so I was very familiar with the organization. And I always remember going to a project that we were doing in East Port of Spain. We do a lot of work in Beetham community. And one of the projects was actually painting a school classroom. And there were a number of people there. I was very new in the organization, hadn't really met many people then. And just doing this project on a weekend. And I ended up standing next to, with a paintbrush, a gentleman who I didn't know. And we were conversing whilst painting. And I was telling him a little bit about who I was and my organization. And he was telling me a bit about himself and so on. And it turned out that that gentleman was Sam Martin, who was the CEO of TSTT at the time. And so, mentioned to him about would love to have the opportunity to pitch Regency to TSTT. The following week, I got a call from their HR office inviting me to come in and talk a bit about what Regency had to offer. And for the next 15, 18 years, TSTT was my biggest client. At one point, I had 200 people working at TSTT.
Wow.
And the importance of that message is not so much that I met Sam and he gave Regency a chance, but it was through service that I was able to, build on an opportunity for my organization.
Make that connection.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people don't connect volunteering and philanthropy and volunteerism with opportunities for your business. Because it is really an integral part of, especially in a country like Trinidad, where many people do congregate in social clubs, in voluntary clubs, in sports clubs, people who are decision makers, people who are influencers. And in order for you to access them and to be part of those conversations, as you said, to be at that table, you've got to go in and you've got to do the work. You can't sit at the back of the room or sit on the sidelines and expect people to just know who you were. So it was through my work and my enthusiasm for painting at the time. But I guess he saw in me shared values as Rotarians that we both, were committed to service. And as I say, this benefited my organization. So there was a direct connection between my volunteering and the impact on my organization and its growth. And its success.
Yeah. So, Laura, what I'm hearing too is the act of volunteering got you at a table.
Yes.
You've been at had you not done the volunteering, because you might have pounding pavements trying to get the same clients to notice you, but they don't know you. And what we do? We do business with those who we know, like, and trust. So if they don't know, like, and trust you, how are they going to know, like, and trust you? You're trying to, improve.
Absolutely. And I think it's probably even more important now because, the marketplace, certainly in our sector, I mean, Georgia would know in the consulting HR space, it is so competitive. We're competing with firms that don't even, reside in Trinidad and Tobago. You've got online competitors. So the marketplace is very much more competitive. So how are you going to differentiate yourself and distinguish yourself? And sometimes it is through service. Sometimes it is through leadership. And in fact, even again, just to connect it back to Rotary, I very quickly got onto the board. I became president. I became district governor of Rotary in the Southern Caribbean. I was the youngest person and only the second woman to do that. And that opened up the whole Caribbean for me in terms of relationships, connections, and business. And we have done work in Suriname, in St. Lucia, in Guyana, because of the Rotary connections that I built. So you don't know how far it can take you, but you've got to be willing to be in a leadership role, to serve your organization, whether it's your professional association, your voluntary organization. And again, Georgia would know this. I always say, don't just join, become the president.
Yes, that's so true. Lara, that's one of the interesting things that I like about you, is that you've not only gone to the table, but you've built tables for other people. Because because when you think of AFET, you open doors for many women to become members of that organization, but also your competitors. When you think of that association, that organization for recruitment service providers, you started that, and that's an organization for your competitors. Talk to us about that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it actually came the TORSP, and I know it's a very clunky acronym, but it came out of a conversation actually with Minister Jennifer Baptiste-Primus when she was Minister of Labour. And again, funnily enough, in a very roundabout way, kind of connected to TSTT, because a lot of the agencies were providing services. And so we would go in to have conversations with the minister about labour, contract law, etc. And we would all be at the table. And she used to get a bit frustrated that there would be sort of 16 of us there, when in fact there could just be one or two representatives of the whole. Right. But we didn't have a professional association. There was no standards established for recruiters, where, as you would know, pretty much every other profession is in some way regulated, right, has guidelines, codes of ethics. We didn't have anything like that. Mm-hmm. And so it was actually myself, Ulrich Warner and Pasha Hussein who got together and really decided, look, we need to set up a framework within which our organizations can operate, so that the government as well as companies would know, this is the list of reputable, registered recruiters, whether you're looking for executive search or payroll or whatever it might be. And that was really the genesis of it, was pushing to have a representation, but more for us to self-regulate, to make sure that we have standards, we have a code of practice to provide comfort, not just to employers, but to candidates and job seekers as well. So it's not about regulating your fees or how much you charge clients or any of those things. It's just more philosophically how you engage things like, obviously, no human trafficking. How do you recruit migrants and migrant workers? Some of those things we also address. Right. It's still very much in its infancy. And I think it definitely needs to be a bit more active. We have a new president from January, so I'm excited for that I think we'll be ramping up some good stuff this year. So, but yeah, I mean, I felt it was important. We talked about it for a while, but nobody had ever actually done it. So, you know what, if you want something done, do it yourself.
Do it. There you go. Sometimes.
Sometimes,
yeah.
Sometimes, yes.
No, that's
and then you bring others along, right? You open, as Georgia said, you open the doors, you bring others along. I mean, what I'm hearing throughout what you're sharing with us, Lara, is a sense that, you're not just going at the table, as you said, you get involved, you become the president. There's a lot of work that goes into this. And I know some people might be listening and be like, well, I don't have time. I don't have time to do all of that. I don't have time to brush my teeth while let's volunteer. Like take care of my, whatever. So I'm curious, obviously that's one way of looking at it, but how do you make the time, and how did you see this as such an important priority that allowed you to? Because I believe, there's always time. It's all about prioritization. So talk to us a little about, you and that, because this is work. What you're sharing here is a lot of work that went in there. It's not just I'm showing up and I'm at a meeting for an hour.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I mean, they always say that Rotary is for busy people. In fact, I spent most of this weekend preparing. I'm doing training in the next coming weeks. We have our incoming leaders training, and I'm facilitating a couple of the workshops for our incoming leaders. So it doesn't end, even though you may have, finished your leadership role. I think it's obviously, for me, I have always been somebody who, and I don't really know where this comes from, but has always kept my word. So if I say I'm going to do something, I do it, and I will make time and I will find time. I am a very organized individual. I love lists. I'm a huge fan of notebooks and buying new notebooks and a new pen and starting a new list. And, and now, of course, you've got a lot of online tools, and there's phenomenal resources available to help you stay organized. It's important to carve out the time to do the work. So, put it in your diary, put it in your calendar, schedule it. For me, as somebody who owns my own business, I own my own time to a certain extent. I can actually block out time and say, right, I need these 2 hours to prepare for Rotary or whatever it might be. I remember when I was appointed to the Office of Procurement Regulation, the first board, and we were setting up everything. So we even had to bring our own tea bags. It was literally ground zero. And so I worked with the board to create all of the contracts of employment, the org chart, the whole HR side of things. And that was days and days and days. And we would go for weekends, and we would, it was a lot of work to set up an organization. But I really felt I was so excited to be part of that, what I saw as a transformative
Yes.
organization in the Trinidad and Tobago landscape. So I do think it's important. You have to be passionate about the work. You have to be
Mhm.
excited and motivated to do it. If it feels like a chore, and there's always going to be some admin and minutes, and there's always going to be a kind of a bleak side of volunteering. But those
Yeah.
things are important,
Yeah.
especially when you're dealing with donor money or donations or what have you. You've got to have proper record keeping. So I think you need to speak to your strengths. So
Mhm.
every organization needs people who are out in front, blowing the trumpet, raising funds, talking to the media, but they also need people behind the scenes, doing the budgets, writing the reports. So, you find your niche, and
Right.
they are equally valuable, those different roles.
Yeah.
And I think that if you find a way that you can give within and it may change over time. So you may have a young family now, so you can't give as much. When your kids are older, you might have more time. I don't have any children, so I did have that space, I guess, to be able to give. But I know people who have young kids who are still chairing boards
Yeah.
and running businesses. So there are ways to do it, but I think it starts with having that passion for what it is, whatever the particular board is, and really believing that you can make a positive difference.
That's
So
right.
that drives you then to get it done.
And
Yeah.
setting that intention around it. Very
Yeah.
important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So,
Mhm.
make the time, and, it's important to, I think, ask for help, to delegate where you can, to lean on others, because very, very rarely are you inventing the wheel, right? There's somebody who's done something like this before.
Yes.
And now, again, with the internet, you can just Google AI. I use AI all the time. I've
Mhm.
got to do a speech on X, write me a speech, and then I'll tweak it. So there's a lot of shortcuts as well now to make it,
Yeah. That's true.
less
So
time
true.
consuming. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's so true, Lara. Thank you so much for sharing those tips.
You're
Yeah.
welcome.
Yeah.
So, Emily,
So,
lots of leaders might be watching us, and some of them will catch us on the replay. I'm
yeah.
hoping that when they see this, it will spark something in them to say, listen, I may not have been at the table, but here are opportunities that I might have missed. And there are different spaces where I need to be sitting at that table, but not just sitting there, making sure that my presence is felt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And when you do get at that table, have some space for somebody else as well.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
I know that, we're all kind of consumed with what's happening in the United States at the moment. And I remember reading, I think it was the last time this particular individual was president, that we shouldn't be building walls, we should be building longer tables. And I
Yes.
feel like that's true just in our day-to-day lives, right? You need to build tables, build spaces, even if
Mhm.
just on your own street, just on your own community. Do you know your neighbors? Can your neighbors collaborate to, as we were talking about, fix a pothole? Invite
Yes.
neighbors into your home and build a
Yeah.
neighborhood community that, I think we can support one another and be there for each other. And as leaders, you might be, the CEO of a bank or insurance company and have a high-powered job, but do you know the people who live next door? Are you helping them as well? So it doesn't have to be on a grand scale. I do think it's important to give back to your country. I do
Yes.
think you need to be at the table where laws are made, decisions are made. I watch the Parliament channel quite often. Some people think it's horrendous, but I find it fascinating. And the joint select committees, do you know what's going on in government apart
Right.
from all the stuff we see in the papers? So, it's your life, it's your country. Get excited and get
Involved.
interested. Yeah.
Wow, this is so refreshing. So refreshing on a Monday
Yeah.
morning.
Yes.
Thank you,
So,
Emily. Yeah, Emily, over to you to wrap.
yes, I wanted to say, well, Lara, I mean, thank you so much. I mean, I think obviously we just touched like the tip of the iceberg because, as you just mentioned, there are so many, it's like numerous, countless that you can get involved. And
Yeah.
I think you also mentioned, Lara, that the way to do that, not only think about the result, like the end result, yes, you might get some good connections, whatever, which might help you, but more importantly, are you passionate about the thing you're going to get involved in? Because this
Yes.
is time, and sometimes oftentimes people feel like they lack fulfillment at some points of their career. They're not getting everything they need necessarily from work directly.
Mhm.
And this is another way. This is an avenue to explore your capabilities, to strengthen maximize, I guess, in some ways, your leadership capabilities. See how you can impact and grow
Mhm.
yourself and others. And in the process, you'll be probably way more fulfilled as a result.
Yes.
So,
Yeah, and I think people underestimate what they can give.
Yeah.
You know, you might be a phenomenal cook, you might be a phenomenal accountant. There's so many ways that you can give, whether it's mentoring young people or supporting an NGO. You don't even always have to join. You
That's
know,
true.
just offer your help, offer to support them if they're doing a project. Maybe you can help, you know, raise money for a particular cause. And as we see in Trinidad, many people just set up their own charity because
Yeah.
they're passionate
Yeah, you
about.
see a problem in the community, you find it, you
Yeah,
set up an
find a
organization.
solution. Yeah, the government cannot fix all your problems.
Definitely, definitely not. So I
Definitely
mean,
not. No.
thinking we should not be thinking like that. We should be thinking like we own, we own our future, we own, our existence, the part
Mm.
that we play. And I think all of this speaks to that very thing. So Lara, again, thank you so much. We are 20 minutes. 20
I know we could talk for another hour, but I won't
Oh,
keep
yeah.
you.
It's been wonderful having you. Thank you for your insight. And we will see you guys next week. We wish you a wonderful, wonderful week. And we hope that you take into consideration some of what was said and you choose something. If you're not involved, find a way to get involved. Get yourself on that table. All right.
Next week will be Carnival. Happy Carnival.
I was just about to say, have a safe carnival, everybody. Yeah.
True. Bye
Thank you
now.
so much. Bye, everybody. Have a great day.
Bye.
Bye.